Welcome to Learner's Planet, my dear children. Children, in the previous session we discussed about nervous system and the organs which are present in our nervous system, right? And in this session, in today's session, we will discuss more about the nervous system. So let us start with this session. Yes, nerves. Children, as you know that nerves are the part of the nervous system. A network of nerves runs throughout our body. That is, the messages travel from the nerve cells all over the body. As you can see here in this picture, these are the nerves which runs throughout our body, and their main function is to travel the message from the nerve cells to all the parts, to the different parts of our body. They travel along these nerve fibers to the nerve cells in the brain, and then the brain will send the message, and then that message will be carried out to different parts of the body. So we can say that the basic functioning of the nervous system depends a lot on the tiny cells called the neurons. Just like a network of nerves are present, there are neurons which are present in the nervous system. So we can say that the nervous system depends a lot on the tiny cells known as neurons, right? So these are the neurons which are present in the nervous system. The brain has billions of them, and they have many specialized functions. Like we have the neurons like sensory neurons and motor neurons, which we will discuss right after this, right? And these are very much important to relay information to each other through a complex process that affects the way we think, we learn, we move, and we behave, right? So depending upon these, there are two types of nerves or the neurons, right? Sensory nerves and motor nerves, right? Sensory nerves pass through the spinal cord and carry messages to the brain, and they also collect the information from the brain and send it, they also collect the information from the different parts of the body and send it to the brain along with one network, right? In the same way, the neurons also occur, like sensory neurons. They take the information from the eyes, ears, nose, tongue and skin to the brain, right? And secondly, motor nerves. Motor nerves carry messages back from the brain. Means the brain will now order, now you have to do this, you have to do that, and that message will be sent to the different parts of the body or from the brain, right? So motor nerves take the brain's orders back along another network, not the same network with which sensory nerves have traveled, but another network, like the cars traveling along their own side of the highway, right? In the same way, motor neurons also occur. Motor neurons carry messages away from the brain and back to the rest of the body. So you can see that all neurons, however, relay information to each other by sending it to different parts from the brain, or by carrying the messages or collecting the information from different parts to the brain, right? So you can just imagine this, that how neurons work, right? You will be very amazed to know that at birth the nervous system contains all the neurons we will ever have, but many of them are not connected to each other. So as we grow and learn, messages travel from one neuron to another neuron, and this takes place over and over one and the other neuron, creating connections or pathways in the brain. And that is why its driving seem to take so much concentration when we first learn, but now this is the second thing, that the pathway is made. So first of all we learn when we grow, and then this connection has been made in the brain, and this connection is made with very much concentration when firstly we learn, and secondly the pathway or the connection is being formed every now and then, right? So in young children, the brain is highly adaptable. In fact, when one part of a young child's brain is injured, another part can often learn to take over some of the lost function also. But as we grow, the brain has to work harder to make new pathways or new connections, making it more difficult to master new tasks or the changes which are established in our behavior patterns. Right? That is why many scientists believe that it's important to keep challenging your brain to learn new things and make new connection, because to challenge our brain to learn new things will help keep the brain active over the course of a lifetime, right? And you just know that memory is another complex function of the brain. The things we have done, learned and seen are first processed in our brain. They are connecting in our brain. They make connections in our brain. If we sense that this information is important enough to remember permanently, it is passed on to the region of our brain and we remember that thing permanently, because it stores that information, and that is why it is termed as the long-term memory, right? As we discussed, as these messages travel through the brain, they create pathways that serve as the basis of our memory. So you can just see and you can just think that nerves and neurons, all these things are so much capable of collecting information and storing it in our brain. And that is why they are very much important part of our nervous system, right? So I hope you are clear with the nerves and the neurons. Let's discuss about reflex actions, right? In the previous session, as we discussed, that the spinal cord controls the actions that do not involve the brain, right? And these actions are termed as the reflex actions. But how can we specifically define a reflex action? Yes, it is the automatic response of the body to an event, means any kind of event, right? And this is termed as a reflex action, right? Like a reflex is an involuntary action that our body does in response to something. So if something is happening to us, then an involuntary action will occur by our body. It will act by our body to that thing, right? And this is known as reflex, means we are reflexing something, right? That is why it is termed as a involuntary action, which is not controlled by us, but it is done automatically. And that is why reflex actions are due to the messages sent by the spinal cord, in which the brain is not involved, right? As we discussed that there are some actions in which brain is not involved. Only the spinal cord is responsible for that, right? Just like we discussed one such beautiful example, that without even thinking some of our organs will work, right? We don't have to decide to kick our leg. It just kicks, right? And even one more example we can discuss over here, like our leg kicks when the doctor taps our knee, right, with a rubber hammer. It is all because of our reflex. If we are touching, for example, if we touch or put our hand on a hot stove, what will happen? A reflex causes us to immediately remove our hand before hey, this is hot message occurs or even gets to our brain, right? So this is the spinal cord, which acts like an organ, to send the message, and a reflex action occurs, right? So reflexes protect our body from the things that can harm it, and that is why it is very much important. So let us see one beautiful image of a reflex action and how does it works. Yes, imagine that this is your imagine that an object is touched onto your hand. An object means we can also term it as a stimulus, right? So an object is touched, like a pin is touched on your hand, and what is happening? Now this nerve will carry the message to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord tells us to withdraw our hand immediately. Means the spinal cord is responding, right? That is why it is termed as response. So we can say that reflex action is the action between the stimulus and the response. The stimulus, that means an object which is touched, whether it is hot or cold or any pen, anything, right, any object. And then what happens? The spinal cord responds. It responds through a nerve, via a nerve, and sends the message that you do not have to touch it, or you have to just remove your hand, take away your hand, right, or take away your leg. If anything is being touched by your leg, if you are putting your leg on the hot stove, then immediately the spinal cord will respond that you do not have to do that, right? So in this we can see that in reflex action the spinal cord acts, but not the brain. So brain is not involved in this. This is an immediate response this is an immediate response given by the spinal cord and the nerve. Very important part of our nervous system, and they are sense organs, right? Our brain collects all the information, it sorts it out, it solves it out, thinks, remembers, creates, compares, distinguishes, solves problems, and coordinates the actions all at the same time, even when we are asleep, right? So you can just think that how our brain is working, right? Our brain is working all the time, even we are asleep, right? So never forget that our brain is so much very active. So we have to like our brain, just like be active and do all the work you want to do, right? So it is the brain which does all such things, but there are other organs also which sense such things and then collects the information and sends it to our brain. Like your friend may be a sight for your sore eyes at the end of a long day, but without the brain you wouldn't be able to recognize him or her. Like pizza sure is delicious to us, right? But without the brain, our taste buds would not be able to tell if we are eating pizza or the box or any plastic which came in our mouth. So none of our senses would be useful without the processing that occurs in the brain. So how does this processes, these all such processes occurs in the brain? It is all because of our sense organs, right? So let us discuss about sense organs. Yes, the brain senses some organs, and these organs help us to see, hear, taste, smell and touch. And these organs are skin, eyes, ears, nose and tongue. So let us discuss about each of the sense organ in detail. Yes, the first organ is the skin. There are tiny nerve endings in our skin, and these nerve endings help us to feel the things. Then and then only we will be able to recognize that what is actually going on, whether we are touching a cold object or a hot object. The skin contains more than 4 million sensory receptors, right? The sensory nerves and the neurons which we discussed about, right? So the skin contains more than 4 million sensory receptors. Mostly they are present in the fingers, tongue and lips, right? So you can just think that 4 million sensory receptors would be working so very fast, and they would be collecting the information and sending it to brain, right? Because of the nerve endings which are present in our skin. What do they do actually? They gather the information related to touch, pressure, temperature and pain, and then they send it to the brain for processing and reaction, right? And because of this only they are able to detect, they also help us to detect heat, cold and pain, and that is why we are able to react, right? So the brain processes and then reaction occurs. But this is all because if the sense organs work, right, like the skin which we discussed right now. Okay, now let's move on to another very important sense organ. Yes, the eyes. Eyes help us in seeing the various objects around us. Since eyes are very important organs, our body has several features to protect them. Let us see what type of several features or the special features are there to protect them. Yes, the eyebrows. Can you see here? These are the eyebrows. The eyebrows prevent sweat from running into the eyes. Whenever we exercise heavily or whenever we run or do any kind of heavy work, then what happens? Yes, sweat occurs, right? And the eyebrows prevent this sweat from running it into the eyes. So these are some of the features which protect our eyes. Yes. The second main feature which protects our eyes are the eyelashes. The eyelashes are present over here, right? Just above our eye, the upper eyelashes and the lower eyelashes, right? So the eyelashes protect the eyes from dirt and the strong light, right? The strong UV light which comes from the sun, right? So if you are more exposed to this kind of strong light and dirt, and if there are no eyelashes, then you will not be able to protect your eyes from such things. So these are also very necessary. The another very important feature of the eyes are the eyelids. Eyelids protect the eyes from injury, right? So you can just imagine that these are some of the very important features which protects our eyes from the sweat, from dirt and strong light, and even from injury, right? Let's move on to another sense organ which is very important. Yes, ears. Ears help us in hearing. Every sound we hear is the result of the sound waves entering our ears and causing our eardrums to vibrate. And as you can recall, do you remember that which is the smallest bone in our body? Yes, the smallest bone in our body is in the ear, called as the stirrup bone, right? So back to our sense organ. Every sound we hear is the result of the sound waves, right? The sound waves will first struck our ears, it will enter our ears, and it will cause our eardrums which are present inside the ears to vibrate, and they also help us to keep our balance. So the main function of the ears is that they help us in hearing, and also they keep our body in balance, right? Now another important sense organ is the nose. Nose help us to smell a variety of objects, like from flowers and the perfumes to the rotten eggs. And according to the scientists or the experts, experts distinguish between more than 10,000 different smells. According to experts, nose can distinguish between more than 10,000 different smells. So you can just imagine that how important this sense organ is, right? Because there are some of the cells which are present in the in our nose, in each nostril, which reacts to these chemicals when we breathe in, and it sends the messages along some nerves to the brain, right? So with this kind of sensitivity of distinguishing between more than 10,000 different smells, it's no wonder that smells are very closely linked to our memories, right? So this is one such very important sense organ. Yes. Now another sense organ is the tongue. The tongue contains small groups of sensory cells called the taste buds that react to the chemicals in the foods. So that is why whatever we eat, we can taste it because of our taste buds. Because the taste buds are the small groups of the sensory cells, because it can sense the taste in the food. And that is why they react to the chemicals in the foods. So taste buds reacts to such type of taste like sweet, sour, salty and bitter. So different regions of the tongue help us in tasting different kinds of substances. Let us see. Yes, This is one diagram of, image of a tongue, right? This is the bitter one. This shows the bitter. This taste bud shows the sour taste. This shows the sweet taste, and this shows the salty taste, right? The sweet taste, sour taste, salty taste, and the bitter taste. So the posterior region of the tongue shows, the posterior region of the tongue senses the bitter taste, then the middle one or the lateral one senses the sour taste, then comes the salty taste, and the most anterior one or the tip shows the sweet, or the senses the sweet taste, right? So these are the taste buds of the tongue, right? I hope you are clear with all the sense organs, right? Now let us discuss about some interesting facts of our body or of our brain, our nervous system, right? Do you know, children, that our brain keeps on growing until you are about 20 years old? So you can just think that our brain keeps on making connections until you are about 20 years old. Our brain has around 100 billion nerve cells which acts in our nervous system, and the left side of our brain is usually better at problem solving, maths and writing, and the front of the human brain is larger than any other animal's brain, even the dinosaur's brain. You must be thinking that dinosaur is so gigantic animal, but then too the front of the human brain is larger than the dinosaur's brain or any other animal's brain. The right side of the brain is creative and helps us to be good at art or music. We discussed about the cerebrum, right? They are divided into two halves, right? The left one and the right one have different functions. In the same way, which we are discussing is the same thing, the right side and the left side of the brain, right? And the brain stores all the sorts of things in the memory, including facts and figures, and all the smells, tastes and things we have seen, heard or touched. So you can just imagine that how much storage, how much information the brain stores, right? From the childhood to the old age, right? So it is an incredible organ of our body. So children, I hope you enjoyed this session about learning of our incredible organ, our brain, right? The brain and all other things about the nervous system, right? So we will meet in the next session with the new lesson. Till then, keep learning, keep enjoying and keep thinking about your brain, because it stores all the information.